It's just past 10 at night. The lamp beside the bed is still on, your phone is face down on the blanket, and somewhere behind your breastbone there's a low hum that hasn't switched off since morning. You can't point to it. But the first thing your nervous system should receive at night isn't rest, and it isn't quiet. It's a single, unmistakable signal of safety, delivered through the slow exhale, that tells one specific nerve the day is over. That nerve is the vagus, and it runs from your brainstem down through your chest and into your gut like a cable nobody ever showed you. Here's the part almost everyone gets wrong. You cannot decide to feel safe. Your body decides that for you, from the bottom up, using cues you were never taught to send. And if the first cue it receives at night is the wrong one, the whole night reorganizes itself around a threat that isn't there. So what is the vagus nerve actually doing while you lie there? It's the main line of your parasympathetic system, the branch of your autonomy that handles rest, digestion, and repair. And about 80% of its fibers run the wrong direction from what you'd guess. They don't carry orders down from the brain. They carry reports up, from your organs to your brainstem, telling the brain what state the body is in. Which means your sense of calm is not something your mind grants your body. It's something your body reports to your mind. And the first report it files after you lie down sets the tone for everything that follows. Think of it like a night watchman who only trusts what he can see with his own eyes. Your brain is the watchman. The vagus nerve is his eyes on the ground floor. If the ground floor is sending up steady, slow signals, long exhales, a slowing heart, a warm gut, the watchman sits down and lets the building sleep. If the reports coming up are shallow and fast, he stays on his feet by the window, all night, no matter how tired he is. You've felt this. You've lain in bed exhausted, eyes shut, and still felt watched from the inside. That's the watchman refusing to sit down. Why does the exhale specifically matter, and not the breath as a whole? Because your heart rate isn't constant across a single breath. It speeds up slightly when you breathe in, and slows when you breathe out, and that gap has a name: respiratory sinus arrhythmia. On the inhale, the vagal brake releases, and the heart accelerates. On the exhale, the vagus reasserts itself, and the heart slows. So the exhale is the exact moment the parasympathetic system takes the wheel. A short, clipped exhale gives it almost no time to act. A long, unhurried exhale hands it the wheel for a full 3 or 4 seconds. This is why every calming breath protocol ever devised, from the physiological sigh to the 4-7-8 count, quietly does the same thing underneath. It makes the out-breath longer than the in-breath. The count is decoration. The lengthened exhale is the mechanism. Now here's where the standard advice falls apart. You've been told to relax before bed. Dim the lights, put the phone away, wind down. All reasonable. But relaxing is a result, not an action. You cannot perform it on command any more than you can command yourself to blush. What you can do is send the specific physical cue that produces it. And most people, lying in bed trying to relax, are doing the one thing that keeps the watchman standing. They're breathing into their chest, high and shallow, the exact pattern the body files under threat. Let me give you the cue itself, because it's the most useful thing in this whole account, and I want you holding it before we go deeper. Lie on your back. Put one hand flat on your chest and the other flat on your belly, just below the navel. Now breathe so that only the lower hand rises. The chest hand stays still. Breathe in through your nose for a count of 4, feeling the belly push the lower hand up. Then breathe out through slightly pursed lips for a count of 6. Slow, like you're fogging a mirror that's just out of reach. 6 seconds out. 4 seconds in. Do that for 2 minutes and no longer. If your chest hand keeps rising instead of your belly hand, you've found the exact habit that's been keeping you wired, and the fix is simply to breathe lower, into the hand that isn't moving. If even that one adjustment, belly, not chest, exhale longer than the inhale, is new to you, hit like. It's the only signal that tells the algorithm to put this in front of someone else who's been lying awake, blaming their mind, when the problem was in their diaphragm. But why does breathing low, into the belly, reach the vagus when breathing high into the chest doesn't? This is the part that turns the trick into understanding. Your diaphragm, the dome of muscle under your lungs, sits directly against the vagus nerve, as it passes through an opening in that dome called the esophageal hiatus. When you breathe deep and low, the diaphragm descends, and gently stretches and massages the nerve at that junction on every cycle. Shallow chest breathing never moves the diaphragm far enough to touch it. So the difference between the two ways of breathing isn't comfort or style. One physically contacts the calming nerve 12 to 16 times a minute. The other never touches it at all. There's a measurement behind all this that's worth knowing by name, because it tells you whether the watchman ever actually sat down. It's called heart rate variability, the tiny, moment-to-moment differences in the gap between one heartbeat and the next. A healthy, well-rested nervous system doesn't beat like a metronome. The gaps flex, a little longer, a little shorter, and that flexing is the vagus doing its job. High variability means the parasympathetic brake is active and responsive. Low, rigid variability, where every beat lands like a clock, means the sympathetic side has the wheel and won't give it up. And here's the quietly alarming part. Your HRV during the first hour of sleep predicts how restored you'll feel in the morning better than the total number of hours you slept. You can be in bed for 9 hours with a nervous system that never once handed over the wheel, and wake up feeling like you fought something all night. Have you ever slept a full 8 hours and woken up more tired than when you lay down? That's not a mystery, and it's not your imagination. That's a night spent in shallow parasympathetic tone, the body horizontal and still, but the watchman never off his feet. Sleep is not one thing. It's a structure, built in stages, and the entrance to that structure has a lock. The vagus holds the key. So what happens in those first minutes after you lie down, minute by minute, if the cue lands correctly? In the first 60 seconds, a long exhale slows the heart by a handful of beats. Within 2 to 3 minutes, if the pattern holds, baroreceptors, pressure sensors in the walls of your carotid arteries, at the sides of your neck, register the steadier rhythm and report up the vagus that blood pressure is stable, no emergency. By minute 5, the brainstem begins releasing its grip on the stress axis, and the slow slide toward stage 2 sleep begins. This is the doorway. Miss it. Spike your system with a scroll through your phone, a sharp thought about tomorrow, a shallow gasp of a breath, and you don't just delay sleep. You reset the whole sequence to minute 0 and start the climb again. Here's a recognition beat you'll know in your body. You're almost asleep, that heavy, sinking, delicious edge. And then a single thought about something undone tomorrow jolts through you, and suddenly you're wide awake, heart tapping, the sinking feeling gone. What just happened is precise. That thought triggered a small sympathetic surge, adrenaline hit the bloodstream, the vagal brake released, the heart sped up, and the baroreceptors reported instability back up the line. The watchman stood up, and it takes real minutes, not seconds, for the system to climb back down to the doorway. This is why one anxious thought at 11 p.m. can cost you 45 minutes. Not because the thought was important, because the nervous system doesn't have a fast reverse gear. There's a whole framework behind why the body treats safety as a physical state rather than a mental one, and it comes from outside sleep science entirely. Stephen Porges, a neuroscientist, proposed what he called the polyvagal theory in 1994. The idea that the vagus has two distinct circuits, an older one and a newer one, and that the body is constantly scanning the environment for cues of safety or danger beneath conscious awareness. He gave that scanning a name, neuroception. Perception is what you notice. Neuroception is what your nervous system notices without telling you. Now, I'll be straight with you. Parts of polyvagal theory are genuinely contested among neuroscientists, and some of the anatomical claims have been challenged in the literature. But the core observation has held up cleanly. Your body evaluates threat and safety through physical cues, below thought. And it does this before you have any conscious say. You don't talk yourself into calm. You cue your way into it, and the mind follows the body's lead. That's the crossover worth sitting with, and it comes from an unexpected place. Thermodynamics. A system moving toward rest has to shed something first. Your body cannot enter deep sleep while it's still holding the day's heat. Your core temperature has to drop by about half a degree to a full degree Celsius for slow-wave sleep to begin, and it does that by pushing blood out to the surface, to your hands and feet, to radiate heat away. This is why warm feet help you fall asleep, and cold feet keep you up. Warm feet mean the vessels are already open, and heat is already leaving. The vagus is part of that same shedding. Falling asleep isn't the body switching off. It's the body venting, heat out through the skin, tension out through the exhale, vigilance out through the vagus. Rest is not the absence of activity, it's a controlled release. and release has a direction and a rate, exactly like heat leaving a warm room through an open window. If that reframes something, and there's a stranger layer coming in about 4 minutes, about the one organ that talks to your brain more than your brain talks to it, subscribe now, because that section is the actual reason I put this together, and it changes what listen to your gut really means. So let's go there. Where do most of those vagal fibers, the 80% running upward, actually begin? Not in the heart. In the gut. Your intestines are wrapped in a mesh of around 500 million neurons, a network dense enough that researchers call it the enteric nervous system, or the second brain. And it reports upward, through the vagus, more than it receives downward, which means the state of your gut at night is one of the loudest voices telling your brain whether it's safe to sleep. A gut that's calm, settled, and not mid-digestion sends up quiet, steady reports. A gut still breaking down a heavy meal at 11 p.m. sends up a stream of activity that reads, to the watchman, like the building is not yet closed for the night. This is the mechanical reason a late, heavy meal wrecks sleep even when you fall asleep fine. Digestion is a sympathetic blunting, energy-hungry process that keeps the gut active and the vagus busy carrying traffic. You drop off because you're tired, but the deep stages get shallow because the gut won't stop reporting. Eat your last real meal 3 hours before bed, and you hand the vagus a quiet line. Eat at 11, and you've put the second brain to work during the exact window the first brain was trying to power down. There's a specific messenger in this that's worth naming: the gut bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, compounds like butyrate, made when certain microbes ferment fiber you couldn't digest yourself. Butyrate feeds the cells lining your colon and appears to influence vagal signaling and inflammation. A gut fed on fiber through the day, oats, beans, cooled potatoes, onions, produces a steadier chemical environment by night than a gut fed on refined starch and sugar. I'm not going to overstate this. The sleep-specific evidence in humans is still young, and I won't pretend a bowl of lentils is a sedative. But the direction is consistent. The vagus is a two-way conversation, and one end of it lives in your intestines, listening to what you fed them 12 hours ago. You may have heard the figure that the gut contains 95% of the body's serotonin, and that this is why gut health governs mood and sleep. That number gets repeated everywhere, and I'd rather be honest with you than let it slide. It's roughly true that most of the body's serotonin is made in the gut, but that gut serotonin largely can't cross into the brain. It works locally, on gut movement and signaling. So the gut absolutely talks to the brain, but not by shipping serotonin upstairs the way the popular version implies. The pathway is the vagus nerve carrying signals, not a pipeline of mood chemicals. The mechanism holds. The story around it got simplified in the retelling. Let me give you the second working picture, because the doorway idea only covers getting in. Think of your nervous system at night as two crews working the same building. The sympathetic crew is the day shift, alert, fast, ready to move. The parasympathetic crew, led by the vagus, is the night shift, the cleaners and the repair team. They don't work at the same time. For the night crew to do its job, clearing waste, repairing tissue, filing the day's memories into long-term storage, the day crew has to clock out completely. The problem for most people isn't that the night crew is weak. It's that the day crew never fully leaves the building. They linger by the door, phone in hand, one eye on tomorrow. And the repair work simply doesn't start while they're standing there. What does the night crew actually get done once they're finally alone? This is where a system you likely never learned about comes in. In 2013, researchers led by Macon Nettergaard described the glymphatic system, the brain's own waste clearance network, which flushes metabolic debris out of the brain using cerebrospinal fluid. Here's the extraordinary part. It runs mainly during deep, slow-wave sleep, and during that stage the fluid-filled spaces between brain cells widen by roughly 60% to let the flushing happen. The debris being cleared includes beta amyloid, the protein that clumps into plaques in Alzheimer's disease. So the deep sleep you reach only after the vagus opens the door isn't just rest. It's the single window in 24 hours when your brain washes itself. Skip the deep stages night after night, and the debris that should have been flushed stays in the tissue. Do you see why the order matters now? The vagus opens the door. Deep sleep is the room behind it. The glymphatic flush is the work that only happens inside that room, and none of it starts until the first cue lands. The long exhale that tells the watchman to sit down. Get the first 90 seconds wrong and you're not just tired tomorrow. You've missed a night of maintenance that doesn't reschedule itself. So what's the first thing your nervous system should receive at night, stated as plainly as I can put it? A long exhale, breathed low into the belly, before your head is even fully settled. The physical signal of safety that lets the vagus take the wheel. Not a thought, not a decision to relax. A movement of the diaphragm that physically touches the nerve and slows the heart on the outbreath. Everything downstream, the temperature drop, the quiet gut, the door to deep sleep, the brain's nightly wash, waits on that one cue arriving first. Here's how to send it, in order, and I'd keep it this simple. As you get into bed, before anything else, do 10 slow breaths with the exhale longer than the inhale. In for 4, out for 6, low into the belly. Keep your feet warm. If they're cold, wear socks or warm them first, because open vessels in the feet are how the body vents the heat that deep sleep requires. Finish eating 3 hours before you lie down, so the second brain in your gut has gone quiet by the time the first brain tries to. And if a thought jolts you awake at 11, don't fight it with more thinking. Go straight back to the long exhale, because the door only reopens through the body, never through the argument in your head. There's an honest uncertainty I owe you here. How much any one of these levers matters varies enormously from person to person. Some people's sleep transforms from the breathing alone, others need the meal timing far more, and the research can't yet tell you in advance which one you are. What's solid is the direction and the order. The vagus first, through the exhale. Everything else arranges itself behind that. Tell me in the comments, when you lie down tonight and put a hand on your belly, does it actually rise, or does your chest move instead? Be honest. I suspect most of you will find the chest moving, and I'd genuinely like to know if I'm right. I spent years thinking sleep was something you earned by being tired enough. Lie down exhausted and the body would take over. But exhaustion isn't a cue of safety. Sometimes it's the opposite. A body running on adrenaline that has forgotten how to stop. The night doesn't begin when you're tired. It begins when your nervous system receives the one signal it's been waiting for since morning. And that signal was never going to come from your mind. It was always going to come from your breath. Share this with someone who lies down tired every night and still wakes up like they never rested. The watchman is waiting for one thing. Give it to him and let the building sleep.